We're diving back into the metroidvania genre, pun intended. Song of the Deep is a 2D metroidvania that released in July 2016 from a small team within Insomniac Games. Now back in 2016, I was incredibly excited for this game despite not being a fan of the genre at the time. Now the reason I was so excited for Song of the Deep despite Metroidvanias being almost like my kryptonite at the time was something I had to really think about, and I think I narrowed it down to two reasons. One, I'm a big fan of Insomniac Games. I'm pretty sure I made that clear in my Sunset Overdrive video, but just in case you needed a refresher. Sure, they've had some missteps, but overall, wow, what a resume they have, and because of their track record and the fact they have experimented with different genres, I believe no matter the game they're creating, they've earned the right to give them the benefit of the doubt. However, what also caught my attention was the fact the entire game takes place underwater. I am someone who has always had a fascination with the ocean. Even as a kid, my dream job was to become a marine biologist, until I got to the biology aspect in school and then focused on my art subjects. But to this day, I love learning more and more about the world within our world. And so when games take place within this realm, you're more than likely going to pique my interest. Despite my excitement for Song of the Deep before release though, it was one of those games that at launch I sort of lost track of and subsequently forgot about. I think Pokemon Go came out around its release, so maybe I was swept up in that whole craze, I don't know. But 4 years and now a new love and appreciation for the Metroidvania genre later, here we are. So now that I've finally played Song of the Deep, what did I think? I honestly think it's another forgotten gem from Insomniac, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game. I'm excited to talk about this one. Welcome to So I Finally Played Song of the Deep. Song of the Deep's story centers around our protagonist, Merrin, a 12-year-old girl whose father is a fisherman. Merrin loves to hear her father's stories of the ocean and all it holds, despite knowing they're just fairy tales, but looks forward to them each night. While her father is at sea, Merrin waits for him to return each night with a candle to guide him home, until one night her father didn't return. Fearing the worst has happened, Merrin manages to piece together enough scrap to construct a makeshift submarine and descends into the ocean to find her father. Now, whilst this is just the game's setup, it really is all you need to know in regards to Song of the Deep's story. The quest to find Merrin's father is the objective for about 75% of the game, so what you'll be doing for a lot of your time in Song of the Deep is exploring the various areas under the sea. You'll meet different characters on this quest, like Swish, the baby sea serpent, and the underwater people called Mero, and their fight against the robotic-like creatures in the Sentinels, which becomes your mission to help after believing your father is dead. Again though, what you'll be doing more than anything is traversing the ocean, and the story just allows us to further explore different locations. When I break down the story like this, it can seem like I'm dismissing the story or that it's not important, but that's not the case. In fact, I think I may have enjoyed the story more than most because of how many feelings of nostalgia and memories the story evoked for me. Whilst the story is simplistic, it does a great job at achieving its goal, which is essentially, Song of the Deep takes place within a children's book. The way the story is written, having a simple setup but evolving gradually to evoke an overall message. The way the panels are illustrated along with the use of watercolors and the narration of the story all wrapped up really transported me back to being a kid. Siobhan Hewlett did a great job at narrating the story, which is important because she is the only voice you'll hear the entire game. She delivers her lines with a storybook-like tone. It comes off like a good audiobook, and her delivery adds a lot of emotion to these mostly still storybook-like frames.
Her submarine broken. Merrin sat helplessly at the bottom of the sea. She opened her father's journal. On the last page, he had written a note to her. Her hands trembled as she read it. My dearest Merrin, I now realize I may never see you again, and I feel that I have failed you. I'm sorry for all the times you went hungry. I'm sorry I could not buy you pretty dresses and paints and books of your own. I wish I could have given you a happier life. Please know that I love you more than all the world. Merrin put down the journal, and her eyes blurred with tears. She didn't want pretty dresses or paints. She had a happy life, and she just wanted it back. For the first time since her journey began, Merrin had lost hope.
The story won't hit the same beats for everyone, and some may dismiss it, but I really enjoyed Song of the Deep's story. Seeing Merrin's character grow as her hope of finding her father diminished, and it can be quite emotional as the narrator, the imagery, and the soundtrack blend together to make sure you're feeling the right emotions in the right scenes. The story really did take me back to being a kid and having my mum read me one of my books, or my grandma, who is Irish like Siobhan, so that accent and tone of voice just really did bring me back to some good memories. So maybe that's where a lot of my fondness for the game comes from. With all the positives I have for the story though, it's not going to be for everyone. But if you have similar memories or experiences, then I think you can pretty easily become engulfed in this story. And in my opinion, it really does add to the gameplay. Song of the Deep doesn't feel like any metroidvania I've played, which isn't saying much considering my resume, but still, let me explain. At its core, yes, it definitely feels like you're playing a metroidvania, as you explore, reach locked off areas that you'll need to come back to once you acquire the right upgrades, and the basic mission structure of go collect this and come back. If you don't like the metroidvania gameplay loop, I don't think Song of the Deep will change your mind on that front. It really is a love it or hate it sort of genre because of the focus on backtracking, which I do understand, as I was someone who wasn't a fan of this style of gameplay. Where Song of the Deep improves on backtracking though is making sure the game is a joy to explore. There is a great amount of different environments to explore, from seaweed forests, shipwrecks, lost underwater cities, to open water expansions, dark claustrophobic caves, to an area that is entirely pitch black. And exploring each environment was just so captivating. Personal highlights for me in regards to the areas had to be the area engulfed in not only total darkness, but if you turn on your lights you attract the giant squids that will insta-kill you. This area, whilst short, is intense. Seeing glimpses of squids as you descend was nerve-wracking, and it by far is the most unique area of the game. I love the areas that begin with no seafloor in sight as well. Again, it's that feeling of what's going on that I can't see, because what makes the environments really interesting is the life in the background, like sharks and turtles, that make you wonder if they'll ever come to the forefront and become an enemy. Visually, the seaweed fields as well are just so vibrant and beautiful to look at, and in terms of collectibles, they're really well hidden amongst the environment and means you need to have a keen eye to find everything. Or the underwater fortress that constantly shifts and changes and really flexes your puzzle muscles, which I'll be honest, mine are pretty weak. I could list every area. They're all so damn impressive, but personally, these were some serious highlights. Exploring wouldn't have worked as well as it does, however, if the movement wasn't well done. We've all played underwater segments in games, and often they're the weakest aspect of their respective titles. Underwater gameplay is not easy, but because Song of the Deep is solely based in this realm, you can really tell Insomniac put a lot of thought into the movement, It's really slick. Usually what we'll find with movement underwater is it'll either be too floaty with delays to your inputs, or too heavy with you really needing to put effort into moving up and down. Song of the Deep is responsive to play. You can stop on a dime. You can move up and down, side to side instantly. Even when you leave your submarine, all the same concepts apply. Insomniac really nailed the movement of being underwater, and because it is so solid, it ups the quality of your time in-game. They needed to get this aspect right, and I think they nailed it. Back to the exploration though, which brings me to the collectibles. There is a lot to go after, and surprisingly, you don't need to go for 100% of everything, because a lot of hidden pathways lead to money more so than upgrades. You can find upgrades for your health and missile meter, new abilities for your submarine, and with the money you find, you can purchase upgrades for your submarine's abilities. It's satisfying to find these collectibles, but it also doesn't feel too collectathon-like. It just has that right balance of reward for exploring every nook and cranny of an area. The combat really is my only issue with the gameplay loop. This is one of those games that if you were to play on easy, I honestly wouldn't blame you. Not because it's a challenging experience, it just isn't a focus which will become obvious when you fight the few bosses. And to be honest, if you just wanted to focus your time on the exploration, I could see why you'd want to go that route. You have a good amount of offense at your disposal with the claw, 3 different missile types, and later a sonar blast, and the enemies themselves do vary in their attacks. It's not unplayable, but it does feel like the weakest aspect of the game. You'll be killing a lot of jellyfish. Way too many jellyfish in fact. They just don't stop for some reason. You will see a lot of the same enemies, just increasingly with more hit points, and rather than being a fun encounter, they can just become an annoyance when all you're trying to do is get a collectible or secret item. Again, not unbearable, just not the game's strong point. Outside of the gameplay loop though, I do have one more issue, which is the game's performance. This game is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't be a struggle to run. The frame rate just isn't consistent at all, no matter what I did to try and balance it out. It seems poorly optimized, and whilst it didn't take me out of the experience too much, it definitely is noticeable. I do also want to mention I had heard the game has some game-breaking glitches for solving puzzles differently than intended. I didn't experience these issues personally, maybe it was something at launch that was a problem, but again, I didn't experience it, but it is something to keep in mind. On the whole though, I loved way too much about my time with Song of the Deep for the issues to carry any weight for me personally. I loved exploring this world, and each area feels so unique and different from one another. My time exploring was only heightened as well when accompanied with the incredible soundtrack. Much like Ori, Song of the Deep just has so many tracks that are beautiful to listen to, and perfectly match the area or story moment they appear with. I really do recommend checking out the soundtrack if nothing else, because it is seriously well done. What else can I really say about Song of the Deep? I can acknowledge the game's issues because no game is perfect, and I can also see why some may not enjoy this title. The story is simple, the combat could use some work, and the frame rate could be better. When I weigh these problems with my experience overall though, I just enjoyed too much about this game to have the negatives carry much weight. The way the story is told and the fond childhood memories it evoked was something I didn't expect, but was really special. Exploring this world was a great time when you have so much variety in the areas. The quality of the movement and the accompanying soundtrack all just made for an experience that made me want to jump straight back in if I put the game down. I'm glad I finally got around to playing Song of the Deep because it was a unique experience to say the least. It's not for everyone, but if this looks like it might be up your alley, I do recommend sussing the game out because I had a great time with the game from start to finish. And it's not too long an experience, only taking me roughly 6 hours to get through, so it doesn't pad out the experience. Song of the Deep was well worth my time, and it's another of Insomniac's games that needs more love.